My unfaithful husband cheated with my sister for years. Everyone knew but covered up the truth. He even got her pregnant and promised the second child must be mine, thanks. My cruel revenge burned them all. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. My name is Lorraine, and this is the story of how my world was burned to the ground by my own family, and how I rose from the ashes. It all ended on a Tuesday. A cold, rainy Tuesday in October. I remember the sound of the rain against the windowpane, a relentless drumming that matched the frantic beat of my own heart. I'd been married to Garrett for 10 years. 10 years of what I thought was a partnership. I supported his career, managed our home, and stood by him always. I loved him. Or at least, I loved the man I thought he was. For weeks, something had felt off. A coldness had crept into our home. Garrett was distant, his eyes always seeming to look right through me. He'd stay late at work, his phone always face down on the nightstand. My sister, Brenda, had been coming over more often, too. She'd give me these tight, pitying smiles, asking if I was okay, if Garrett was treating me right. I thought it was sisterly concern. God, I was a fool. The truth came out not with a bang, but with a quiet, sickening click of a laptop lid. Garrett had left his email open. Usually, I would never pry. I believed in trust. But a subject line caught my eye, an email from my own father, Walter. The subject was simple, Brenda's appointment. My hands were shaking as I clicked it. It wasn't a long email chain. It was a confirmation for a 12-week ultrasound. And a message from my father to Garrett, make sure she takes her vitamins. We need this to go smoothly. Don't mess it up. The world tilted on its axis. Brenda. My sister, Brenda, was pregnant. And my husband was managing her prenatal care. The rain outside seemed to get louder, turning into a roar. I just sat there, staring at the screen, the words blurring through the tears that started to fall. I scrolled up. There were other emails. Plans. Whispers. Discussions about how to handle Lorraine when the time was right. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. A strange, cold calm washed over me. I printed the emails, my movements robotic. I walked into the living room where he was watching TV, where my entire family had gathered for what was supposed to be a simple family dinner. My father, Walter. My mother, Helen, looking nervous as always. And my sister, Brenda, sitting on the couch, one hand resting protectively on her still flat stomach. I dropped the papers on the coffee table in front of them. Can someone explain this to me? I asked. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a razor. Silence. Garrett's face went white. Brenda looked down at her hands. It was my father who spoke, his voice dripping with condescension. Lorraine, don't be dramatic. Dramatic? I whispered, a hysterical laugh bubbling in my throat. My husband is having a baby with my sister, and my entire family has been lying to my face. And you call that dramatic? Brenda finally looked up, her eyes filled with a strange mix of defiance and guilt. It just happened, Lori. We didn't want to hurt you. Hurt me? I looked around at their faces, these people who were supposed to be my blood, my rock. You didn't want to hurt me? You conspired behind my back. You treated me like a fool. Garrett finally found his voice, a pathetic whine. Lori, baby, we can work through this. I still love you. That's when the last piece of my old life shattered. It was my father, Walter, who delivered the final, killing blow. He stood up, looking down at me with utter contempt. Let's be honest, Lorraine. Garrett and Brenda are a better match. They can produce a strong heir. As for you, he sneered, and his words are burned into my memory forever, don't worry. Maybe the second child will be yours. The insult, the sheer, calculated cruelty of it, stole the air from my lungs. He wasn't just dismissing me, he was erasing me. He was telling me that I was nothing more than a placeholder, a vessel for a second best option. In that moment, the love I had for all of them turned to ash. The grief turned into a cold, hard diamond of rage in my chest. I looked at each of them one last time. Garrett, the weak man I had wasted a decade on. Brenda, the treacherous sister. My mother, a ghost in her own home, too afraid to speak. And Walter, the puppeteer, the monster who pulled all their strings. I didn't say another word. I turned, walked upstairs, and packed a single bag. They just watched me go. As I walked out the front door into the pouring rain, I didn't look back. I was leaving a house, but it felt like I was escaping a tomb. That was the night my old life died. And it was the night I was reborn. The first few months were a blur of cheap motels and stale coffee. The divorce was swift and brutal. My lawyer, a stern but fair man named George, helped me navigate the paperwork. Walter's influence meant I walked away with next to nothing. They kept the house, the savings, everything we had built. They even tried to paint me as unstable, the wife who couldn't handle the truth. All I wanted was my freedom. I drove until I ran out of road and money, ending up in a small city hundreds of miles away where no one knew my name. I found a tiny, one-bedroom apartment above a bakery. The smell of fresh bread every morning was a small comfort, a reminder that the world could still hold simple goodness. I got a job as a personal trainer at a local gym. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. It paid the bills. And lifting weights, feeling the burn in my muscles, was a kind of therapy. Every rep was a piece of anger leaving my body. For a year, my life was a quiet routine. Work, eat, sleep. I didn't date. I didn't trust anyone. The wound was too raw. I spent my nights alone, sometimes just staring at the ceiling, replaying that final, horrific conversation in my head. I built walls around my heart, thick and high. And then, I met Sterling. It was a Saturday morning at a farmer's market. I was picking out tomatoes when a man's voice next to me said, "Those are the good ones." I glanced over. He had kind eyes, a gentle smile, and a look of quiet sadness that I recognized because I saw it in the mirror every day. We started talking, just small talk about vegetables and the weather. But there was something more there. A connection. His name was Sterling. We agreed to get coffee, and that one coffee turned into another, and then into dinner. On our third date, he told me his story. He was an architect. He was also Garrett's younger brother. I felt the blood drain from my face. I stood up to leave. "I'm so sorry," I said, my voice trembling. "I can't do this." "Wait," he said, reaching for my hand. "Please. Just listen." He told me he hadn't spoken to his brother or father in over 5 years. He had seen the way Walter controlled everyone, the casual cruelty, the way they treated me even before the end. He had left, unable to be a part of their toxic world. He knew I was Garrett's ex-wife. He had recognized me that day at the market, but he wanted to meet the woman who had survived them, not the victim they had created. He understood my pain in a way no one else could. He had his own scars from the same people. With him, I didn't have to pretend. I could be broken, and he wouldn't try to fix me. He would just sit with me in the pieces. Slowly, brick by brick, the walls around my heart started to come down. He was patient, kind, and he made me laugh, a sound I thought I had forgotten how to make. We fell in love. It wasn't a fiery, passionate romance. It was a quiet, steady love built on a foundation of shared understanding and mutual respect. A year later, we were married in a small ceremony at the courthouse, with only 2 friends as witnesses. A few months after that, I stood in our bathroom, staring at 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test. Tears streamed down my face, but for the first time in years, they were tears of pure, unadulterated joy. Sterling held me, his own eyes wet. "We're going to be a family," he whispered into my hair. I was finally happy. I had a husband who adored me, a baby on the way, a life I had built for myself from nothing. I thought the ghosts of my past were finally buried. But ghosts have a way of clawing their way out of the grave. The peace lasted for 7 beautiful months. I was starting to show that lovely little bump, a constant, happy reminder of the new life growing inside me. Sterling and I were in our blissfully domestic bubble, painting the nursery, debating names, planning for our future. It felt real. It felt safe. The attack came, as it always did, without warning. It arrived in an email. I was in the kitchen making lunch when Sterling came in from his home office. I knew something was wrong instantly. The color had drained from his face, leaving it a sickly, pale gray. He was holding his laptop like it was a venomous snake. "Sterling? Honey, what is it?" I asked, wiping my hands on a towel. He couldn't speak. He just turned the laptop towards me. The screen was open to an email. There was no subject line. The sender was an anonymous, jumbled address. But it wasn't the sender that mattered. It was the attachments. My heart stopped. They were pictures. Dozens of them. Pictures of me and Garrett from years ago, from our honeymoon, from vacations. Intimate photos. Personal photos. The kind a husband and wife take for themselves, meant for no other eyes. There were videos, too. I didn't have to click on them to know what they were. The email text was short and cruel. "Thought you might want to see who you really married. She's not the saint you think she is. A concerned friend." A hot, crawling shame washed over me, followed by a wave of pure, cold fury. This wasn't a concerned friend. This was an execution. This had Brenda's fingerprints all over it. She had found my happiness, and she had decided to destroy it. I looked at Sterling. His face was a mask of pain and confusion. This was a man who had only ever known me as the strong survivor. He'd never seen this side of my past, this evidence of a life where I had loved his brother, a man he despised. "Sterling," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Look at me." He finally tore his eyes away from the screen, and what I saw in them broke my heart. It was doubt. A tiny, poisonous seed of doubt. "Those are from a lifetime ago," I said, my voice low and urgent. "They're from my marriage to him. Before everything. Before he and Brenda, before they destroyed everything." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "This is her. This is Brenda. She can't stand that I'm happy. She can't stand that I escaped. She sent these to hurt you, to hurt us." He stared at me, his jaw tight. "Why would you even keep them, Lori?" The question felt like a slap. "I didn't," I said, shaking my head. "I deleted everything. I burned everything from that life. I swear to you. I don't know how she got them. Maybe from an old hard drive. I don't know. But Sterling, this is a part of my past. It's not a part of my present. You are my present." He sank into a kitchen chair, burying his face in his hands. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the ticking of the clock on the wall. Each tick felt like a hammer blow against the fragile new life we had built. Brenda had fired her shot, a poison-tipped arrow aimed directly at the heart of our marriage. And now, all I could do was wait and see if the poison would spread. The next few days were the longest of my life. A tense, fragile silence filled our home. Sterling was there physically, but his mind was a million miles away. He'd look at me, and I could see the battle raging behind his eyes, the man who loved me fighting the images he couldn't unsee. We talked, or rather, I talked. I told him everything about my marriage to Garrett, the good and the bad. I explained that those pictures were from a time when I was a different person, a naive girl who believed in fairy tales, before I knew what monsters my family truly were. He listened, but the wall between us remained. He slept on the couch. He said he needed space. Every night, I'd lie in our bed alone, one hand on my growing belly, and I'd cry silent tears. I had survived them once. I didn't know if I had the strength to survive losing everything all over again. The breaking point came on a Thursday night. I found him in the nursery we had been painting together, just standing in the middle of the room, staring at the half-finished mural of stars and moons on the wall. "I can't get them out of my head, Lori," he whispered, his voice raw. "I see you, and I see him." "Then look harder, Sterling," I pleaded, my own voice breaking. "Look at me, the woman standing right here. The woman carrying your child. That girl in those pictures is gone. They killed her." We stood there, on the brink of collapse, when his phone buzzed. It was a message from his cousin. "Hey man, just heard about Brenda's big news. Crazy stuff. Didn't know she was seeing anyone. Congrats on being an uncle again, I guess." Sterling stared at the phone. "What news?" My blood ran cold. I knew. Before he even made the call, I knew. He called his cousin back. We put it on speaker. The voice on the other end was cheerful. "Oh, you didn't hear? Your sister Brenda just posted all over social media. She's getting married. Some guy she met a while back. And she's pregnant, due in a couple of months." The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Brenda wasn't just attacking me out of spite. She was trying to blow up my life before her own secrets came out. She was getting married, starting her own perfect family, and she wanted to make sure mine was in ruins first. But then, something worse happened. As Sterling was processing this, his face went ashen. He dropped the phone and clutched his chest, a strangled gasp escaping his lips. "I can't breathe," he choked out. Panic, sharp and absolute, seized me. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, my fingers fumbling. I yelled our address, my voice high with terror. It was a panic attack, a severe one, brought on by the relentless psychological torment. The ambulance ride was a siren-filled nightmare. At the hospital, they sedated him. The doctor came out to speak to me, his face grim. "Physically, he's okay. But his blood pressure is dangerously high. This level of acute stress, it's not sustainable. He needs absolute calm. No more shocks." I sat by Sterling's hospital bed all night, watching him sleep, his face finally peaceful under sedation. And as I sat there, the fear and the grief inside me began to curdle, hardening into something else. It was a cold, quiet rage. They had come for my past. Now they had come for my present. They had come for my husband. They had come for my child's father. They had declared war. And they had forgotten one very important thing about me. I was a fighter. The moment Sterling was discharged, my mission was clear. The victim, the girl who ran away in the rain, was gone for good. It was time for the fighter to take over. The first call I made was to George, the lawyer who had handled my divorce. We met in his stuffy, book-lined office. I laid it all out for him, the history, the affair, the pregnancy, and now, the systematic campaign of harassment from my sister, Brenda. I showed him the emails, the pictures, the videos. George listened patiently, his face impassive. When I was finished, he steepled his fingers and looked at me over his glasses. "Lorraine, what do you want to do?" "I want to press charges," I said, my voice devoid of any emotion. "Invasion of privacy. Harassment. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Whatever you can make stick. I want a restraining order so airtight that she can't even mail me a letter. I want her to understand that this stops now. He nodded slowly. This will be ugly. They will drag your name through the mud. They will use those photos against you in court. Let them, I said. They've already done their worst. There's nothing left for me to be afraid of. George's expression softened for a moment. This isn't just about the photos, is it? No, I admitted. This is about everything. This is for the life they stole, and for the new one they're trying to burn down. The next step was to prove the emails came from Brenda. I still had a few contacts from my old life, including a tech-savvy friend who owed me a favor. I called him. I need you to trace an email. No questions asked. 2 days later, he called back. Got it. It was sent from a public library computer, but the user was logged into a personal cloud account to get the files. The account belongs to Brenda. He forwarded me the digital proof. It was the smoking gun. Armed with the evidence, George filed the papers. A court date was set. Brenda was served with a temporary restraining order. Of course, she didn't take it quietly. The first volley came from my father. He called me, his voice booming with rage. What the hell do you think you're doing? Dragging this family's name through the courts? After everything we've done for you? Everything you've done to me, you mean, I shot back, my voice cold as ice. This is between me and Brenda. You would be wise to stay out of it, Walter. You ungrateful little brat, he spat. You will regret this. I will ruin you. You already tried, I said, and for the first time, I felt a surge of power. And I'm still standing. I hung up the phone. Sterling and I became a team. He handled the home front, making sure I was eating, resting, taking care of myself and the baby. I handled the legal battle. We were united, our bond forged stronger in the fire of this new crisis. The fear and doubt were gone, replaced by a shared resolve. Brenda's attack had been meant to tear us apart. Instead, it had made us invincible. She wanted a war. Now, she was going to get one. While the legal storm was brewing, I got a call that pulled me back toward a part of my life I thought I had left behind. An old friend, a promoter named Sal, was organizing a major charity fight night to raise money for a local women's shelter. One of his main event fighters had dropped out due to injury. I know it's a long shot, Lori, he said over the phone. But the crowd always loved you. It would mean the world to the shelter if you'd step in. Just one last fight. I looked down at my 5-month belly. Sal, I'm pregnant. He laughed. I know. I'm not asking you to fight now. The event is in 4 months. You'll have had the baby by then. It would be the comeback story of the year. I should have said no. I had a newborn to think about, a lawsuit, a life to manage. But the idea took root. The gym had been my sanctuary. The ring had been the one place where I was in complete control. It wasn't about the glory or the money. It was about reclaiming something that was mine. It was a way to physically fight back against the helplessness I'd felt for so long. I'm in, I said. The next few months were a whirlwind. Our daughter, Wendy, was born, a beautiful, healthy baby with Sterling's kind eyes. She was perfect. Holding her, I knew I had everything I needed to fight for. 2 months after she was born, I was back in the gym. My training was grueling. Every morning before the sun came up, I was running, lifting, sparring. My body screamed in protest, but my mind was clear. Each punch I threw at the heavy bag had a name on it: Garrett, Brenda, Walter. It was my therapy. The night of the fight, the arena was electric. My opponent was Bianca the Bruiser Johnston, a tough, undefeated fighter 10 years younger than me. Stepping into the ring, I felt a sense of calm I hadn't felt in years. This was my world. The first round was brutal. Bianca was fast and strong. She caught me with a clean shot that sent me stumbling. I was rusty. My timing was off. At the end of the round, I staggered back to my corner, my head ringing. The second round was worse. She opened a cut over my eye. I was on the defensive, just trying to survive. The crowd was roaring, but all I could hear was the voice of my father in my head, telling me I was worthless, a placeholder. I was losing. As I sat on the stool before the third round, my corner man toweling the blood from my face, I saw a figure pushing through the crowd near the ringside. It was my mother. Helen. I hadn't seen her since the day I left. She looked older, frail, her eyes filled with a desperate intensity. She got as close as she could and shouted over the noise. "Lorraine!" I looked at her, shocked. Her face was twisted with an emotion I had never seen on her before, fury. "What are you doing?" she screamed, her voice raw. "Are you going to let her beat you? Just like you let us beat you?" My corner man tried to push her back, but she wouldn't be moved. She grabbed the ropes, her knuckles white. "Fight, you fool! Fight like you did when you walked out of that house. Remember what they did to you. Remember the child your sister had behind your back while you were planning your future. Remember what they took from you. Get up and fight." And then she did something I never could have imagined. She reached through the ropes and slapped me, hard, across the face. The sting of it was nothing compared to the shock. But through the shock, her words hit me. Remember what they took from you. And suddenly, it wasn't Bianca in the other corner anymore. It was all of them. Every lie, every betrayal, every moment of humiliation coalesced into a single point of white-hot rage. The bell rang for the third round. I walked out of my corner, and I was a different person. The rust was gone. The fear was gone. All that was left was fire. I moved with a precision and ferocity I hadn't felt in years. I saw the surprise in Bianca's eyes as my punches landed, hard and fast. The crowd roared. The fight had turned. I was no longer just a boxer. I was an executioner. The fight ended 47 seconds into the fourth round with a knockout. As the referee raised my arm in victory, I looked over at my mother. There were tears streaming down her face. And for the first time, I felt something other than anger towards her. It was a flicker of understanding. She had given me the only weapon she had left, the truth. After the fight, my mother was waiting for me backstage. We stood in silence for a long moment before I finally broke it. "Why are you here, Mom?" "Your father. Walter, he threw me out," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "After you filed the lawsuit, the press started sniffing around. He said I was weak, that I was a liability. He told me to leave. I should have felt satisfaction. I should have felt like it was justice. But looking at her, this small, broken woman, all I felt was a profound sadness. I did the only thing I could. Come home with me," I said. Sterling was hesitant at first, but he saw the look in my eyes. Helen moved into our spare bedroom. The first few weeks were awkward. She was a ghost in our house, quiet and apologetic. She doted on her granddaughter, Wendy, with a desperate kind of love, as if trying to make up for years of lost time. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, she finally told me everything. "I was a coward, Lorraine," she began, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "I saw what Walter was doing. I saw him poisoning Brenda against you," whispering in Garrett's ear. "He always wanted control. You were the only one he couldn't fully break, and he hated you for it." She told me about the plan, how Walter had orchestrated the affair between Garrett and Brenda. He saw Garrett as weak and controllable, and Brenda as ambitious and cruel, a perfect match to carry on his twisted legacy. He encouraged it, facilitated it. I knew about the pregnancy from the beginning, she confessed, tears rolling down her cheeks. I wanted to tell you. God, I wanted to scream it from the rooftops. But I was so afraid of him. He told me if I said a word, he would destroy me, make sure I never saw any of my children again. He owned me, Lori. Body and soul. Her story was a pathetic, tragic tale of a woman trapped in a cage of her own fear. Then, she looked at me, her eyes clear and filled with a pain that went beyond regret. There's something else you need to know, she said, her voice dropping. I'm sick, Lori. The doctors found it a few months ago. A tumor, in my brain. They said I don't have long. The world seemed to stop. All the anger I had held against her for so long dissolved, replaced by a wave of grief so powerful it buckled my knees. This wasn't a monster. This was my mother, and she was dying. Why didn't you tell me? I sobbed. Because I didn't deserve your pity, she said, taking my hand. Her skin was thin as paper. My only goal, my only reason for holding on, was to see you one last time. To tell you I'm sorry. And to see my granddaughter. You gave me that, Lorraine. You gave me peace. My mother lived with us for 2 more months. They were months filled with a strange mix of sorrow and grace. We talked more than we had in my entire adult life. I learned about the woman she was before Walter broke her spirit. We didn't erase the past, but we found a way to sit with it, to acknowledge the pain and find a small measure of forgiveness. She passed away on a sunny afternoon, sleeping in a chair on the porch, with Wendy's small hand in hers. Her last days weren't lived in fear in Walter's cold house, but in the warm, loving home I had built. In the end, I was able to give her the one thing she had never been able to give me, a safe place to land. The funeral was a small, quiet affair. My embittered brother Jared came, looking lost and broken. We spoke for the first time in years. He apologized, a hollow, desperate sound. He was another of Walter's victims. I told him I forgave him. I meant it. There was no room left in my heart for that particular anger. My main focus was the upcoming trial against Brenda. My father, Walter, had tried to get the case thrown out, claiming it was a frivolous family squabble. He hired the best lawyers his money could buy. But George was confident. We had the proof. The day of the trial, the courtroom was tense. Brenda sat beside her lawyers, looking pale but defiant. Walter sat in the front row, staring daggers at me. I held Sterling's hand, my anchor in the storm. The prosecution laid out the case clearly, a pattern of harassment, the digital trail proving Brenda sent the emails, the documented medical emergency Sterling suffered as a result. Brenda's defense was that it was a prank, a foolish mistake. The trial was going as expected until the prosecution called their final rebuttal witness. To my utter shock, they called Garrett to the stand. My ex-husband looked like a ghost. He was thin, haunted. He hadn't seen him since our divorce. He shuffled to the stand and was sworn in. Brenda shot him a look of pure venom. The prosecutor began. Mr. Sterling, you were once married to the plaintiff, Lorraine? Yes, Garrett mumbled. And you had an affair with her sister, the defendant, Brenda? Yes. And that affair resulted in a child? Garrett took a shaky breath. He looked at Brenda, then at our father, Walter, whose face was like stone. Then he looked at the judge. That's what I was led to believe, he said, his voice cracking. The prosecutor pounced. What do you mean by that? Garrett's lawyer jumped up. Objection. Relevance? It is entirely relevant, Your Honor, the prosecutor countered. It speaks to the defendant's character and a pattern of deceit that is central to this case. Overruled, the judge said, clearly intrigued. The witness will answer the question. Garrett looked like a man on the edge of a cliff. He took another deep breath and the words tumbled out, quiet but clear, into the stunned silence of the courtroom. Brenda was pregnant. I was told the child was mine. We were going to get married after my divorce from Lorraine was final. But there were complications. After the baby was born, I had my doubts. I did a DNA test. He paused, swallowing hard. The results came back. I was not the father. A collective gasp went through the courtroom. I stared at him, my mind reeling. Brenda's face had gone from pale to a ghastly white. Then who is the father, Mr. Sterling? The prosecutor asked gently. Garrett started to tremble. He looked directly at Walter, his eyes filled with a mixture of terror and loathing. His voice was barely a whisper, but every single person in that room heard him. It was him, he said, nodding towards our father. It was Walter. Chaos erupted. The judge hammered his gavel. Brenda let out a choked sob. Walter sat perfectly still, a small, cruel smile playing on his lips. The truth was finally out, and it was uglier, more twisted, more depraved than anything I could have ever imagined. My family wasn't just broken. It was rotten to the core. Brenda hadn't just cheated on me with my husband. She had been a pawn in her own father's monstrous, incestuous game. The jury was out for less than an hour. Brenda was found guilty on all counts. Leaving the courthouse that day, I felt strangely empty. The victory was hollow. There was no satisfaction in seeing Brenda crumble, only a deep, profound pity. We were all just collateral damage in Walter's war for control. A few years passed. Brenda served a short sentence, paid a hefty fine, and disappeared from public life. Her marriage to the man she'd been seeing fell apart after the trial. The last I heard, she was living alone in another state, working a dead-end job. Her son, the boy at the center of it all, was being raised by distant relatives who wanted nothing to do with our family name. Jared, my brother, moved away and started his own life. He sends a Christmas card every year. We're not close, but the hate is gone. The hardest part was Garrett. A year after the trial, I ran into him at a coffee shop. He looked 10 years older. He apologized, sincerely this time. He told me how Walter had manipulated him his entire life, always making him feel second best, pushing him towards Brenda, filling his head with poison. I know it doesn't excuse what I did, Lori, he said, his eyes pleading. But I was weak. And I am so sorry. I looked at the shell of a man, the man I had once loved, and I felt nothing. The anger, the hate, the love, it was all gone. There was just a void. I know, Garrett, I said. And for the first time, I meant it. I forgive you. I said it not for him, but for me. It was the last chain holding me to my past, and I felt it break. My life with Sterling and Wendy, and soon our second child, our son Samuel, was everything. We built our businesses. We were happy. I still trained, not for competition, but for myself. The gym was still my church. I thought the story was over. I thought all the monsters had been vanquished. But I had forgotten about the king of the monsters himself. For my 45th birthday, I agreed to do one last exhibition fight. It was a massive event, televised nationally, with all proceeds going to a charity for victims of domestic abuse. My opponent was a formidable champion, but for me, this fight was a celebration. It was a final, triumphant return to the ring, a symbol of how far I'd come. The arena was packed. Sterling and our children, Wendy and Samuel, were in the front row. The fight was intense, a beautiful, technical battle. We were in the final minute of the final round. The crowd was on its feet. I was exhausted but exhilarated. And then, I saw him. A figure was calmly walking towards the ring, through the parted ropes. The referee turned to stop him, but froze. It was my father. Walter. He looked disheveled, his eyes burning with a mad, cold light. And in his hand, he was holding a gun. The crowd went silent. The music cut out. The only sound was the frantic shouting of the security guards who were too far away to intervene in time. "Lorraine," he said, his voice eerily calm as he stepped into the center of the ring. "You thought you could get away, didn't you? You thought you could destroy my family and just walk away and play the hero." My opponent, bless her heart, had already backed away, her hands up. It was just me and him, under the bright lights. All my training, all my years in the ring, couldn't prepare me for this. "It's over, Walter," I said, my voice low, trying to keep him calm, trying to buy time. I slowly began to circle him, keeping my hands open and low. "It's over when I say it's over," he roared, raising the gun. "You took everything from me. My legacy. My children. You let the world see me for what I am. I told you I would ruin you. If I can't have you under my control, then no one can have you at all." From the corner of my eye, I saw Sterling screaming my name, trying to get past security. That sound, his terrified voice, was the distraction. Walter's head turned for a fraction of a second towards the sound. And my body moved. Years of training took over. It wasn't a thought, it was pure instinct. I lunged forward, not at him, but to the side, closing the distance. The first shot rang out, deafening in the silent arena. A searing, white-hot pain exploded in my shoulder. I stumbled but didn't stop. The second shot hit my side, stealing my breath. But I was almost there. He was trying to aim again, his hands shaking. I launched myself into the air. A third shot grazed my arm. But it was too late for him. My leg extended in a perfect roundhouse kick, the kind I had practiced 10,000 times. It connected with the side of his head with a sickening crack. The gun flew from his hand. The surprise on his face was almost comical as his eyes rolled back and he crumpled to the canvas like a marionette with its strings cut. I landed in a crouch. The stadium was utterly silent for a beat. And then, the pain hit me, a tidal wave of agony. I looked down at the blood blooming across my shirt. The world started to spin, and I collapsed. The last thing I remember is Sterling's face above me, tears streaming down his cheeks, his voice pleading with me to stay awake. Then, darkness. I woke up 2 days later. The first thing I saw was Sterling, asleep in the chair by my bed, his hand still holding mine. In that quiet moment, with the steady beeping of the heart monitor as the only sound, I knew I had survived. I had fought the final battle, and I had won. But I also knew I didn't do it alone. I survived because of Sterling's love, because of the thought of my children, and maybe, just maybe, because of the quiet support of people out there who understand what it's like to fight your own demons. Lying there, I thought about all of you who have listened to my story up to this point. If you're still listening, please do me a huge favor and like this video, and comment the number 1 down below. It lets me know you've been here with me on this journey. Your support is a huge encouragement for me to keep going. Please, comment the number 1, and then listen as I tell you the rest of my story. My recovery was long and painful, but I was never alone. Sterling was by my side every single day. The world, it turned out, had watched my final fight live on television. I had become an unwilling hero, a symbol of survival. The story of my family's depravity was laid bare for all to see. Walter was sentenced to life in prison. He never showed an ounce of remorse. About 5 years into his sentence, they found him in his cell. He had taken his own life. He left a note with 3 words on it: "Lorraine did this." Even in death, he tried to cast himself as the victim. But I refused to carry his darkness. My story became a mini-series. We made sure everyone who was a part of it, even the ones who had hurt me, received a small payment for the use of their life rights. It wasn't about rewarding them, it was about closing the book, cleanly and completely. Today, my life is quiet. And I am so grateful for it. Sterling and I are still ridiculously in love. Our company, an architectural firm we built together, is thriving. Our daughter, Wendy, is in college, studying to be a doctor. Our son, Samuel, just made the high school basketball team. They are good, kind, wonderful kids who have grown up surrounded by nothing but love and honesty. We live in a house by the sea. I don't fight in the ring anymore, but every morning, I walk on the beach and I feel the strength in my body, the peace in my soul. The scars are still there, both the physical ones from that night in the ring and the emotional ones that run much deeper. But they don't hurt anymore. They're just a part of my map, a reminder of the treacherous terrain I had to cross to get to where I am now. I learned that family isn't always about the blood you share. It's about the people you choose, the people who choose you, the ones who stand with you in the fire and help you find your way out. It took me a long time to learn that, but it's a lesson I will carry with me for the rest of my days. Thank you for listening.